Hi everyone. So I had a viewer ask me recently if I could speak to the INFJ challenge. I believe more common in compliant or adaptive submissive INFJs. That has to do with the particular qualities and dynamics of introjective FE. Particularly the tendency that introjective FE has of quite automatically appropriating and integrating and interiorizing norms, values, modes of organization, and rules of the group, the tribe, the population, making them your own, and in the process, risking to lose your individuality, lose your sense of identity, repress your NI dominance if you are an INFJ, for example, and in the process, kind of lose a sense of yourself and get stuck in adaptive submission, you know. So what I like about this question is, in a sense, it's also a test of the robustness of my theory. Not long ago, I introduced my full typology of INFJ subtypes, where I listed the compliant/adaptive submissive INFJ, the solipsistic INFJ, the spiritualized INFJ, and the secure/spiritual INFJ. Always remember the distinction between spiritualized and spiritual INFJs. Now, why I call this viewer's question a test of the robustness of my theory is that, well, it's presenting us with a practical case. This person didn't, just outright say, I'm a compliant INFJ, I'm an adaptive submissive INFJ. But that's what's implied in his question, I think, because he is very much talking about the struggles he has with this tendency of his to introject FE so much that he doesn't really know how to do anything else. So it's like he's aware. What I thought was interesting in this question is he's aware that this is a defense mechanism. He's aware that this is a partly maladaptive defense mechanism. He's aware of wanting to transcend it, but he just finds that it has a power of suction such that he can't really move himself out of this particular mode of relating to the world and others, even though he knows that this is at the cost of his sense of authenticity and sincerity and his individuation in the long term. So he's asking this very concrete question: what do I do, right? So what I would say is there's quite a useful concept in my latest book, The Infinite Soul, this book here. The book came out recently in INFJ Life in the Modern World. It's a book on the INFJ, and particularly on how INFJs can assert themselves and their authenticity in the world today, but not at the cost of their own happiness, at the cost of their own freedom, at the cost of their own blossoming, and the regard that they are held in the eyes of other people. One of the main challenges of INFJs that INFJs face in the world today is the illusion, one might even say the delusion, that even a modicum of happiness can only be purchased at the cost of authenticity. So there seems to be a conviction in a lot of INFJs, this really, really deeply anchored idea, wrong idea, I believe, that it's not possible in the world today to be authentically INFJ and to be happy. So in a sense, to find at least some kind of substitute to happiness, let's say, the second best thing you can find outside of happiness, requires not authentically living an INFJ life. A lot of people are convinced of that. And a lot of people who know this view is not completely correct or not correct at all are still aware that it's hard to completely divorce yourself from this view. So this book explores all of these questions. You can find it at the link below, by the way, if you're interested in knowing more, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit because in this particular book, and at numerous, pretty much in all the chapters of this book, I use a concept which you might be familiar with. I haven't talked about this concept in a while now, but this video is a good opportunity to return to it. And it's the concept of islands of spirit. And basically what I propose is this idea that in order to live an authentically INFJ life, which is not an antisocial life, which is not withdrawn life, which is not a life of unhappy and frustrated isolation and resentment at the way society functions and so on, because we don't want that. You know, this is never going to be a key to happiness, okay? This is never going to be a key to flourishing. If there's a word that I would use to describe this book, or at least what I'm hoping this book is a guide to INFJ flourishing in the world as it is, not as the world as, you know, we would like it to be. Okay. Now, Islands of Spirit it's meant to be quite concrete. We need to connect to Islands of Spirit. And what I mean by Islands of Spirit is something like a group of peers in the real world. So when I say in the real world, I really mean here outside of online. Okay. It might be tough for some of us, it might be tough for maybe the more Gen Z people among us, but something happens when you're interacting with people, including something happens to your FE when you're interacting with people in the real world, socially speaking, and not via the medium of a screen. So when you need to sort of be able to take out the virtual element and meet people. Find a way to engage with a group of peers, you know, that have interests in common with you, that are willing to discuss the topics that you're interested in, that are very much aligned with you in terms of how to discuss certain topics, how to authentically express yourself and not feel like you had to fit a particular persona, a particular mold, and where you can interact with these people in a dynamic, according to a dynamic that doesn't really have an end in sight, like a means to an end kind of perspective. That's what I call Islands of Spirit. It's a way of cultivating your relationship to spirit and the particular worlds of meaning that INFJs are attuned with, very finely attuned with, even when they're not aware of it. So Islands of Spirit sounds like highfalutin and abstract, but it also can be very concrete. Okay, you live in a town. Let's say you live in a smallish town. Well, you know, there has to be ways that you can get in touch with people via a kind of club, common interests, or if you like hiking, or if you like books, or whatever it might be. But you might initially find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh yeah, I might consider this. Or you might find all the reasons in the world not to do this. Or you might say, I will do this, but then procrastinate about it, delay it indefinitely. Now, what you need to understand, and psychoanalysis really has helped us to understand this better, is whenever you're doing this, what's really happening is that you don't want to actually develop those islands of spirit. You don't want to cultivate those islands of spirit because you're used to your own maladaptive defense mechanisms. And what you are doing is basically like what would qualify as a kind of Freudian slip, except acted out in the real world. So you forget, oh yeah, I should have got in touch with that group and I didn't. Or I don't have time this week, but maybe I will next week. Oh, I didn't have time either the week after. And you procrastinate indefinitely. Well, you know, that kind of thing happens because you basically, at some level in your unconscious psyche, you have not decided yet that this is the right step to make for you. And I'm saying make the jump. That's also part of the Jungian existentialist framework here. At some point, you're going to have to take the leap. It's going to depend on you and you only, and the world is not going to make you do that for you, okay? You do not need to be in a position of absolute dependence on the ways of the world. At some point, you need to make the leap yourself. Connect with these people. The idea is to allow, in your whole network of social relations, you are going to remain adaptive submissive with certain people. But if you allow, you know, authenticity to leak in via your interactions with a particular group, your particular stronghold, it's your castle, it's your fortress. You can allow your more authentic side to grow within that. And you're doing it without isolating yourself from the world because you're still interacting with these peers. And the idea is that the more you assert yourself within this group of peers, the more you will learn to allow your NI to flourish, allow your NI to grow, and stop seeing the affirmation of your NI as a direct threat. Because the reason why people are adaptive submissive is because they think that showing too much of their NI will cause other people to see them as strange and to reject them and potentially to harm them. This is not completely conscious, or sometimes it's not conscious at all, but this is what is happening psychically. So they initially conceal their NI to the world, end up sort of losing touch with their own NI, repress their NI, and that's the familiar trappings of adaptive submission, of compliance. So you need to, basically what you need to do is to trust that showing your NI, allowing your NI to shine in all its oddness, because it has odd parts to it, is not going to be threatening, is not going to result in a state of being attacked or assaulted or shamed or made to feel guilty. The islands of spirits are an excellent sort of ground to cultivate this. And you'll see that progressively this pattern of dynamics will percolate into other aspects of your social reality which are not directly connected to the islands of spirits. And you will allow your social network wherein you are affirming your NI and therefore your authenticity and therefore your transcendence of adaptive submission, but perhaps towards a path of spiritualization, you allow the social network to widen progressively. It's kind of fake when people, read books or we watch videos and they tell you, like, you can make one decision in a split second, it changes your whole life. No, like in this case, it's careful cultivation of a particular mode of being that is not your primary mode of being that you're familiar with and that is the most sort of connected to your familiar modes of defense. This is about embracing a new mode progressively until it becomes your new normal. And Islands of Spirits are key in this. Okay, so again, if you want to hear more about this, I really recommend you get this book. The link is right below, The Infinite Soul. It's pretty cool. It's called The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality. The books, as you can see, can go very well together. So you can also get both at the link below. A new look at the INFJ personality. This is deepest investigation of the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness. What is it like to be an INFJ? And this book is like, okay, we know the INFJ mind now. What's it like in the world? What's it like about, when it comes to happiness and interacting with others and being in love and everything? 2 books on the INFJ, get them. And as usual, guys, the live below my channel is the Patreon. The link to my Patreon page is down below. Very soon, in a couple days, I will be releasing my new bonus content, exclusive Patreon video going in depth about a particular topic. And I think in this particular instance, I'm going to talk about INFJ narcissism. This is going to be an in-depth discussion only on Patreon for now. So if you're interested, you can join my Patreon. That really, really massively helps me with the channel. You can also interact with me, suggest new topics. So join me there, and I'll talk to you next time, guys. Bye-bye.